What does it mean when an artist paints the devil and makes us weep for him? Not a monster, not a creature with horns and a forked tail, but a beautiful young man, broken, glaring through tears, abandoned by everyone he once called his own. This is The Fallen Angel, one of the most haunting depictions of Lucifer ever painted. And the strangest part of its story is this: the very people who were supposed to judge it as a masterpiece nearly destroyed the young painter's career because of it. The Fallen Angel, or in French, L'Ange déchu, is an oil painting completed in 1847 by the French academic painter Alexandre Cabanel. Today, Cabanel is remembered as one of the most powerful and successful artists of 19th century France, a painter of polished mythologies, idealized nudes, and grand portraits for emperors and aristocrats. But in 1847, none of that had happened yet. Cabanel was only 24 years old, a promising but unproven student living in Rome, trying to prove that he deserved the trust that had been placed in him. 2 years earlier, in 1845, Cabanel had won the second Grand Prix de Rome, a prestigious scholarship that sent France's most talented young painters to study at the Villa Medici in Rome, fully funded by the state. In exchange, every year, these students were required to send a painting back to Paris. This piece was called an envoi, a kind of report, a proof of progress, judged harshly by the Academy's most senior artists. Cabanel's first envoi had already gone badly. A large nude inspired by Greek tragedy had been mocked by the jury as clumsy and poorly composed. So for his second submission, Cabanel made a bold and risky choice. Instead of another safe mythological scene, he turned to John Milton's Paradise Lost and to one of the oldest stories in Western religion, the fall of Lucifer, the most beautiful of all angels, cast out of heaven for his pride. This painting is not enormous compared to other academic works of its era. It measures roughly 120 by 196 centimeters painted in oil on canvas. But its scale is not what makes it powerful. What makes it powerful is what Cabanel dared to put inside that frame. Let us look closer, because this painting rewards patience. It is not meant to be glanced at. It is meant to be studied, the way one studies a face trying to hide something. At the center of the composition lies Lucifer, reclining across a bed of dark, rocky ground. His body is youthful, athletic, almost impossibly perfect, closer to a Greek god than to any traditional image of the devil. There is no fire here, no chains, no grotesque distortion. Cabanel paints damnation as beauty, and that single choice is what unsettled so many people who first saw it. His hands are clasped tightly together, pressed against his face. One muscular arm is raised and bent, partially covering his features, as if he wants to hide from the world, or perhaps from himself. Above that arm, his eyes are visible, and they do not look away from us. They glare, sharp and rimmed with red, somewhere between fury and grief, and caught in the corner of one eye, a single tear. That tear is, arguably, the emotional center of the entire painting. It tells us that this is not a being who has accepted his fate. He still rages against it. He still mourns what he has lost. Behind him stretch his wings. And even here, Cabanel refuses to give us a simple villain. Near the shoulders, the feathers are pale, almost angelic, touched with hints of blue and gold, the remnants of what he once was. But toward the tips, the feathers darken into a deep, shadowed navy, blending into the black ground beneath him, visual proof of a creature caught between two worlds, no longer belonging fully to either. Near his feet, a thorny vine creeps across the rock, a quiet reminder of suffering and exile, echoing the curse placed on the earth itself. And in the sky above him, the detail that turns this from a portrait into a story. A great host of angels flies away in the distance, smaller, softer, less detailed than Lucifer himself, moving joyfully in formation toward the light. They do not look back. They do not seem to notice him at all. He is utterly alone, frozen in his fall, while the rest of heaven simply continues on without him. Cabanel's brushwork throughout is smooth, controlled, almost sculptural, the hallmark of the academic technique he had spent years mastering. Every muscle, every strand of windswept hair catches the light with the precision of a Renaissance master. This is not careless emotion thrown onto canvas. It is grief and rage rendered with total technical control. So what was Cabanel actually trying to say with this painting? On the surface, this is simply the story of Lucifer's fall, drawn from Milton, drawn from centuries of Christian imagination about pride, rebellion, and exile from grace. But Cabanel does something most painters before him hadn't dared to do. He refuses to make Lucifer ugly. He refuses to make him purely evil. Instead, he paints a being who is still, undeniably, beautiful, and still, undeniably, suffering. We are not asked to fear him. We are invited, almost uncomfortably, to feel for him. That single tear does more theological work than any sermon could. It asks the viewer a quiet, dangerous question. Is this monster, or is this tragedy? This is the heart of Romanticism, bleeding into a story that traditionally belonged to rigid religious doctrine. Where older art showed Satan as a warning, Cabanel shows him as a wound, proud, wronged in his own eyes, magnificent even in ruin. It is no surprise, then, that the Academy's jury reacted badly. When the painting arrived in Paris in 1848, the senior artists who reviewed it were unimpressed and uneasy. They criticized the drawing, the movement of the figure, and, more quietly, the unmistakable sensuality of presenting the devil as an object of beauty rather than horror. For an institution built on strict rules of decorum, a weeping, gorgeous Lucifer was simply too much. Cabanel was so stung by the experience that he kept the painting in his own private collection for the rest of his life. He never sold it, despite countless opportunities. It would take him several more years, and another major work, The Death of Moses, before he finally won the full approval of the Academy and began the rise that would eventually make him one of the most celebrated painters in France, a favorite of Emperor Napoleon III himself. And yet, history has a way of correcting its own first impressions. Today, The Fallen Angel is widely considered Cabanel's finest and most original work, far more recognized than the polished, crowd-pleasing mythologies that made him rich and famous in his own lifetime. The Fallen Angel now belongs to the permanent collection of the Musée Fabre in Montpellier, in the south of France, fittingly, Cabanel's own hometown. After his death in 1889, the painting was sold at auction in Paris, likely bought back by his family, and that same year his brother, Barthélemy Cabanel, donated it to the museum, where it has remained ever since. Standing before it in person, visitors often describe the same feeling: discomfort, followed by sympathy. You came expecting a devil. You leave remembering a young man crying alone in the dark, watching everyone he loved disappear into the light without him. Perhaps that is Cabanel's real achievement here. He took the oldest villain in Western storytelling and reminded us that even the fall from grace has a human face. That pride and grief so often arrive together. That being cast out, whether from heaven, from a family, from a community, from belonging itself, is one of the loneliest experiences a being can know. In a story meant to warn us about sin, Cabanel quietly slipped in a story about heartbreak instead. What did you feel when you first looked into Lucifer's eyes in this painting? Fear or sympathy? Let us know in the comments below.